For this project, I'll be using my Bernina 1300 MDC serger. For this project, I'm using a 2-thread flat lock stitch in the left needle, and since I'm using that particular stitch, I only need 2 spools of thread. I'm using a regular spool of serger thread in the left needle and a spool of woolly nylon. I have the tension set in my left needle to 1 and the tension set in my lower looper to 5. Since I'm using only the lower looper, I have disengaged my upper looper using my upper looper converter for my Bernina machine. Now, and your serger may not require this, so don't worry about that, and just always refer to your instructions. Now let's get ready to sew. I'm going to start by pinning the number 9 piece, which is the front, to the number 11 piece, which is the side. Now I'm pinning my pieces wrong sides together instead of right sides together, which you would normally do. And I'm doing this because I'm creating a flat lock stitch, and the flat lock stitch is a decorative stitch that will show on the right sides. So when you get to the circle where you would normally pivot, I've gone ahead and clipped into that area right there so that we can go ahead and sew that in a straight stitch. Once we get everything pinned in place, we're going to go ahead and take it to the serger. We will be using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and at the beginning of your stitch, make sure that your serger chain stitch is about 3 to 4 inches long because we don't want it to unravel. And also, when you're done stitching, make sure that you're leaving a long tail as well. Now here is the fun part. This is how you actually make the seam flat. Once you're done stitching, you're going to take both pieces of fabric and you're just going to pull them apart. Remember how we had the tension reduced down to a 1 on the thread and also to a 5 on the lower looper? This is going to enable that stitch to lay flat. Now, if you notice on the right side of the fabric, that's called a loop stitch, and on the back side is called a ladder stitch. Now, it's up to you which side you prefer to use for your decorative stitch. I'm using the loops on mine. Next, we're going to add the back leg piece, which is the number 10, and we're going to sew that wrong side to the side piece. And remember, once we get to the circle, to go ahead and clip into that and match that part up. Instead of having to pivot, we're going to just keep on sewing and sew a straight seam. And instead of going ahead and stopping right at the side piece, right in that point, we're going to continue matching up the front to the back piece, wrong sides to wrong side, and sewing all the way down to the end of that leg. Now we're going to go ahead and stitch the inseam. We're going to pin it the same way, wrong sides together. Now that we've gotten that first leg finished, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other leg. Now, in order to stitch the crotch seam, you're going to take one of the legs and you're going to turn it inside out. And you are going to put it inside the other leg so that you can stitch the crotch seam wrong sides together. Now at this point, what I would suggest doing and what I would also do is to take this opportunity to go ahead and try on your pants to see how they fit, because they are workout tights and you want to make sure that at this point they will stay up on their own just the same way they would if the waistband was attached, because when you're working out you don't want the pants to slide down or to be uncomfortable or hanging low in the crotch. And if they don't fit well, since you don't really have any side seams, you can go back in and take that crotch seam in a little bit more. Now for the waistband, we're going to sew the ends together, wrong sides together, and we're going to go ahead and stitch that on the serger the same way, using that flatlock stitch with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now with wrong sides together, we're going to fold that band in half along the fold line and pin those raw edges together. And this is where I'm going to pretty much follow the pattern instructions and add that band to the waistband of the leggings, and matching all the centers and all of the other markings. And where I used my loop stitch as my outside decorative stitch, this time I think it would be a little less bulky at the waistband and it will just look better to use the ladder stitch on the outside. See what I mean? It just looks a lot cleaner with the loops on the inside and the ladders on the outside. Well, now you are at the finish line. So take this opportunity to give your leggings one last try and decide the length you want to hem them. And there are several ways you can hem them. You can just serge them on the ends and just turn them under and give them a nice top stitching hem. You can use a cover stitch if you have a cover stitch machine. and or you can use some sort of decorative stitch at your hem. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you have learned a new technique that you can carry on and use on other activewear, knitwear, swimwear, or even lingerie. As always, thanks so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment or a question, and also please subscribe to my channel.